Hello, I'm Speculative Dude. Welcome to Movies That Should Have Known Better. A curious look at movies that really should have known better. Oh, by the way, we got spoilers! Hi, I'm Speculative Dude. Welcome to Movies That Should Have Known Better. Now, today, I've actually got a special guest host on my show. I've got Retro Girl with me.
Hi!
And we just got back from watching the 6th Resident Evil movie. Actually, it's the 5th. Yeah, I keep saying 6th.
Really feels like the 6th.
It does. This series has gone on far too long. Now, one big difference between the two of us on these is Jessie is a huge Mila Jovovich fan.
Yeah, I am.
And while I don't mind her so much, it's that I just really don't think, other than Fifth Element, I've not been a fan of any of the movies she's been in. So that's...
Other than Fifth Element, she's only really done
That's these and
Resident Evil.
And like Ultraviolet, and that was basically just Resident Evil with vampires instead of zombies.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, good point. That's a discussion for another time. Okay, so now that we've actually had a cool down period, we actually watched the movie, then we watched something else, so that way we don't get the jump on, especially, she knows that I tend to really pounce on things right off the bat. We'll go with my gut instinct, so cool down time is needed. But, okay, so what were your first thoughts on it?
Well, Speculative Dude, honestly, I have to say that I enjoyed it more than the 4th movie. I mean, Afterlife just left a really bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I definitely agree with
so
that.
So much that I actually had to go home and rinse with Listerine. It's nasty. There's this stuff that burns.
That's true. There was so much that didn't make sense in that one, which, now, granted, this one, of course, isn't really supposed to make any sense. I mean, it is within the confines of the movie. Anyone who thinks this has anything to do with the game is a complete moron.
She doesn't actually mean moron, it just means that, well, these things absolutely have no continuity whatsoever.
Exactly. There's, even amongst themselves, it's ridiculous. I mean, the characters, I mean, it's one thing to say you have clones of characters, which this does many, many times, but at the same time, there are characters who literally should have been dead or gone that are, all of a sudden, they're back. You know?
Well, like, for instance, if you guys have not seen 1 through 4 already and just coming into the franchise with number 5 and judging it on that, a few things that you should know. Rain, the girl that is brought back and is sitting on the swing when we first see her, she's got the really big old gun, you know, she died in the 1st movie.
Played by Michelle Rodriguez. Great actress, and she always plays the tough gal.
And she pulls it off really well.
She does really well, but once again, they killed her in the 1st movie, and she was pretty well torn apart. There's no real sense as to why she's brought back.
No, there's, other than they try to explain it with clothes.
And it's one of those, it's
always the clothes.
Yeah, and it just really comes, it's like, really? Okay, that's, I mean, yes, I know they established the Alice clones, but that almost made sense in a way, as bad as the idea was.
Speculative Dude, I actually have a question. Yeah. How much do you think that they were charged on Genosha? No, it wasn't Genosha. It was sorry, bad reference there.
It's
sorry.
Like, it's like, oh my gosh, I think we just went X-Men.
We did go X-Men road. No, I meant on you know, in the really bad trilogy. And Attack of the Clones. I can't actually think of the planet at the moment.
Actually, believe it or not, it is Genosha.
Is it Genosha?
It is Genosha, yeah.
Okay.
As they refer to those insect flying guys that click and hum as the Genoshans. So, yeah.
That's funny. But I wonder how much...
Yeah.
I actually have to wonder how much they actually charged them to make those clones.
That's, yeah. Yeah.
And do you think that little girl who was playing her daughter was actually Jango Fett in disguise?
That would have been funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I will say about, like I said, with Alice, it made sense that they would clone her because she had the powers. They wanted to make someone like her in the 3rd movie. As dumb as I think it was to use the clones, I can understand why they would use that as a plot reference. The other characters, they try and shoehorn in this, well, they're running all these scenarios, and that's why we need all these clones, because we need blank clones that we can program for our, for our next scenario.
for any sort of reason of where they will be.
Yeah, and and I can understand, once again, also they make the reference to basically they're pretty much built on a conveyor belt, but then they show it, and it's like, that really comes off as weird. Like, they're basically just hanging off these, like, hooks, completely blank, and it's just like, okay, it's one thing to say it and another thing to show it completely, and it's like, they didn't need to show it. It just came off, like you said, very macabre, and not in a good way. Macabre can be good, but...
Warning, don't take your kids to this sort of movie. Not only are they going to be able to not sleep because of all the zombies, I mean, which... There weren't a whole lot of zombies in it for being a zombie flick.
Now, when they were shown, they actually were used fairly well, despite the, I think the biggest disappointment was the Russian army zombies. That was just hilarious to me.
Yes, apparently they took references off of Dead Snow, which is my area of expertise there, where they have these Soviet Union Russians that have been turned into zombies that exist in the snow, and they will... use tanks, use cars, use machine guns, use chainsaws. Yep. They can exist without their head being attached to their body.
They pretty much did that scene set in a fake scenario, basically a scenario dome, if you will, that's set as Russia. You basically had the Russian military as zombies doing all exactly like that. Yeah. It's just like...
In Dead Snow, it was actually funny.
Yeah. It's one of those, there are moments in this movie, I think I mentioned it once while we were in there, there was one moment where somebody actually told a joke and I said, oh my gosh, I think they were funny and they were actually trying to be funny.
And then they died.
Yeah.
I think it was Luther.
I think it was, yeah. He makes a joke.
And then he gets shot.
Yeah, and he dies next. It's just like, wow, that's...
But then again, he's the canon black guy, and no offense to our black audience here, we love you, please, mwah.
Yeah.
But... Canon black guy.
It's like really. It's like, you know, they make the joke in I can't remember which parody movie it was, but one of the I think it was not just
Mel Brooks.
Well, there's no, it wasn't Mel Brooks. It was not just another teen movie.
Oh, right.
He comes up and says, you know, I'm the stereotype. You know, I'm the stereotype black guy. I'm just supposed to say, you know, and really Luther, unfortunately, is that. It's like, we don't have any other black actors, so we're gonna bring him back in, and it's like, I actually think his character was cool. You know, he was cool. He was actually decent in 4. I mean, he just kind of at the end when he's still alive, it was kind of a head scratcher. But it's like, okay, there's, you know, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
It is kind of nice to see more than one person live through a movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, and another thing there, we don't get to see much of Claire anymore. We don't get to see much of Kmart anymore.
You get to see them in a very brief flashback at the
very beginning, because you know they have to always get their royalty funds. And that
exactly,
sort of
which is hilarious because while they're not technically in the movie, they are credited during the end credits. It's every single one of them.
Pretty bad.
Yeah. One thing that I had hoped for, which I knew wasn't going to work, was when they said Leon was going to be in it, and his role is minuscule to say the least. They barely mention that it's him.
Wait. Leon was actually in the movie? I thought we were watching Dolph Lundgren.
I know. Forgive me, I can't even think of his name right now, but, you know, now I've heard that he's a decent actor, but in here, when he talks, he sounds like a very young Dolph Lundgren. And he's actually kind of a bigger guy, a little bit taller than everybody else there.
Very lank hair. He doesn't look like the clean sort of Leon Kennedy that we all know.
But when he talks, and, you know, the way he is, like I say, he's fairly well built in it, I got the distinct impression, I was like, this guy is like a young Dolph Lundgren. He looks and kind of sounds like Lundgren, you know, like, say, pre-Rocky IV.
Wow.
You know? It's, you know, and that's, you know, what it's hilarious to watch. It's like, really?
That's
wow.
the best cut.
Yeah. So, that was a really...
It completely threw him, and I'm just like, huh?
Yeah, I was listening to it, and I was like, who does he sound like? I was like, holy crap. I mean, and I know I watched, you know, we watched together, we watched Expendables 2 recently, so of course Dolph Lundgren, I'm remembering him, and it's just like, he really does, because I keep flashing back to the old, like, Universal Soldier, what he sounded like in there, you know, all those...
Masters of the Universe.
You know, it's, you know, and it's, like, the undefinable accent, it's like, okay, he's got one, but he doesn't, and that's pretty much what Leon sounds like in here. Now,
we're not going to lead you astray, it does have its good moments. In the very beginning, it's got a really good recap if you haven't ever seen the movies before. It also has that great like reverse slow-mo effect that was really actually pretty nice. You see this carrier ship, and there's like explosions going on everywhere.
Well, one interesting thing about that is that you find out later they will show it in forward motion, and really it's only about 30 seconds, roughly, of actual camera time. But when they slow it back and they're playing the whole thing in reverse, it takes a couple of minutes, and that actually does come off pretty well.
You actually get to see everything, like where the bullets are going, even the water around Alice when she was coming out of the water. With the reverse slow, it was actually really, really well put together.
And oddly enough, I think that was the best part of the 3D effect. Yeah. Was that scene.
I was glad we did pay extra for the 3D effect.
Yeah, luckily we went to a matinee, so we got to get cheaper on 3D because normally Jesse knows this. I hate going to 3D movies because most 3D movies suck. And this one, the 3D effects, like I said, except for that opening scene, sucked. I thought I was watching a 2D movie the entire time. It did. A lot of people will say, oh, the 3D effects were just bad. They were there, but they were bad. No, this really everything just looked flat.
Very flat.
It didn't look 3D. You know?
Yeah. Now, there were moments where you could actually tell that it was 3D, like at the end when the bullets were being shot into Rain after she injected herself with the Lost Plagas, which is like, okay, virus. That doesn't make you stronger. No. Apparently, it made her undefeatable.
Yeah, apparently, yeah, she like basically regenerated. I was like, she became friggin' Wolverine.
Yeah, she was made into Swiss cheese, basically, and because Luther and Leon were shooting her up pretty good, but all these bullets were just like coursing through her to her fingers, and then just like spat out the end of her fingers.
Yeah, well, that was an amusing thing to watch. It was also kind of like, oh, that's odd.
It had no basis at all.
And, last time I checked on anything Resident Evil, including the other movies, that's not quite how Lost Plagas work. In fact, actually, if you look through the rest of the movie, you will see several Lost Plagas, and that's not how they work.
No. There was one enjoyable sequence, though, where the reanimated Jill Valentine, who, by the way, is blonde now and not a brunette, is thoroughly kicking Alice's ass.
Yeah.
That was pretty enjoyable.
That was true. Yeah, I actually leaned over in the theater and said, you know what? I am actually really enjoying watching her get her ass kicked here.
It was
mainly because she's always kicking so much ass. It's nice to see her take her lumps for once.
But yeah, all in all, I mean, it's good for entertainment's sake. I mean, definitely not as bad as Afterlife. So
no, it was much better than Afterlife. Afterlife, at least they shoehorned in a bunch of cameos by semi-celebrities who aren't that good. Here, they put in extra characters. They did have Ada Wong. They keep calling her Ada. Yeah. It's like, no.
They just need to come up with a better way of titling, because Retribution...
It's like there wasn't any Retribution happening in this movie. Like, the last one would have made more sense as Retribution. Because she actually fights Wesker at the end.
This one probably would have been better as an Afterlife, or even Apocalypse.
Apocalypse, yeah, because at the end, they're basically surrounded by an army. Wesker has now taken over the White House, who, mind you, he helps, granted, I mean, even he basically says he's got his own reasons for doing it, but he helps Alice, and in the end, and, most people know I don't cuss very much, but I will say this, is at the very end, he gives the most bullshit reason ever. He just jams her in the neck to reactivate her powers that he took away at the beginning of Afterlife. Why? I don't know. She seemed to be doing pretty good in both Afterlife and here without her powers, because, I mean, she was pretty much still Ultra Chick.
Yeah.
Despite not having any powers.
But yeah, all in all, good for entertainment value, not so much for continuity.
That's terrible. Yeah.
It was, on a scale from 1 to 10, I'd probably give it mid-grade of 5 and mediocre.
I'd say so. Yeah, that works. One thing I will say, and that is, this is definitely, obviously, sequel bait. There's, clearly supposed to be more coming.
Well, of course there is. Sequel bait at the end there, where they had all of the lickers up on the pillars and everything, and they're trying to kill them with fire, and all those flying things.
Which look like mini dragons.
Yeah.
Or either that, or mutated T-virus vampire bats. I couldn't really tell.
Or pterodactyls, even.
That's possible,
With all the stuff that they're coming out with, I would not be surprised they brought in a pterodactyl into those movies.
Might as well, yeah. It's I mean, there are just, not to mention there's so many things in, not only that, but just within the movie itself that make no sense. It's like, okay, at the beginning they have Alice in a holding cell. And this is one that it's, I've heard other people mention, but
well, let's not give the entire movie away. I mean, if they want to see it, let them go see it.
Okay, that's true. But it's like, okay, the computer system shuts down, namely because they say Wesker is hacking in and trying to get Alice out because he wants Alice's help. Okay, that's fine. But there's a lot of things that go along with him getting Alice out that don't make any sense. Like, okay, wait a minute, why did that happen? Why did that happen? That doesn't make any sense. If a computer system shut down, that is not going to happen. There's just so many things that's like, have any of these people ever worked with a computer system, especially a mainframe this big? And honestly, one thing I will say that I don't like is that in the first movie, the computer system is supposedly the one that shuts down the facility.
The hive.
The hive, yes. I always refer to it as the facility. It seems like that to me.
He's very angry about these movies.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about movies. Anybody who knows me knows that if I'm very opinionated, and when I get locked on one thing, I go for hours. But basically, this simple thing is that they basically defeat the computer, but the computer shuts it down so that the virus will not spread. Okay? Now, however, the computer apparently wants to take over and destroy everything, period, which does make us like, okay, somebody would have had to have reprogrammed this computer for that, because that's not what it was doing in the first one. They took the line, "You're all going to die down here," from the first movie, which was more of a reference to a warning of what was going to happen, to this one is the computer is now chasing them basically throughout the entire movie, for lack of a better phrase. It's following, it's giving orders to these people, and it's like, that doesn't make any sense either. I mean, granted, I know it's a reference to the first movie, but it's not, it doesn't make any sense.
Because if you want to think about it, Retribution maybe had more to do with Red Queen, because she was the one getting revenge.
True, yeah, maybe, but the only question is revenge for what?
And that, we may never find out.
Exactly. So, it did end on, not really a cliffhanger, obviously, but it definitely ended with, like I said, obviously. Now, there are rumors there are actually going to be one more, well, technically two more movies, one more chapter split into two movies, which every series seems to be doing now. I don't know why.
So one more love letter.
Yeah. Paul W.S. Anderson. There's one reason why I watch his movies, and it's because I know they will be so stupid.
My wife is hot.
Yeah. I mean, literally, it is really sad. Like, as she said, I have referred to the Resident Evil series as Paul W.S. Anderson's love letter to his wife.
Zombies are cool.
Yeah. And that's really sad when it's like, okay, that's the best way you can show your wife love is to put her in a series of zombie flicks, which have little, if anything, to do with the game they were based on. And, she knows that's another one thing I'm always, continuity-wise, they try and throw in the characters from the game here and there and the monsters, but it really is its own entity. It's basically Resident Evil in name only. So, it's, the first one, I still say the first one actually had more to do with the game than any other ones, because they were escaping the facility, the virus had just broken out. Okay. That's it. What?
Go ahead.
Okay, but, okay, I know, we've had this conversation before, so she's hearing this many times, but, okay, but after that, it was like, okay, da-da-da-da, and then, of course, Apocalypse, even Paul Anderson is pretty much pretending it didn't happen, or at least nothing in that movie happened.
No, my poor Odette GR.
Which, interesting enough, they made it sound like he was going to have a significant role in this movie, and he really didn't.
Quite disappointing.
No. Now, at the very end, when a bunch of characters die, you at least get the idea that another one of his clones dies. You do see earlier in the movie one of his clones dies, but there obviously are more of them. Same with Michelle Rodriguez. One thing that they didn't do that I wish they had done was there's a scene where they come across one of Michelle Rodriguez's clones from a scenario that they had been working on earlier. She sees Alice and thinks that she's the Alice from the scenario. And so she comes with them for a moment. Well, she does eventually die, But as they're doing it, this little commando unit, if you will, of the Red Queen's security guards, led by Jill, who's still under mind control, comes through, and another Michelle Rodriguez clone is there with them. I really thought it would have been good, since they're coming through the same area, if she had seen the other clone laying there and at least had some kind of reaction. I thought that would have been really good, but no. It's like there's one of those, and of course, one of those, I will bring up the, once again, complete bullshit ending to that fight, where Jill picks up a gun, has a chance to shoot Michelle Rodriguez or do something, and instead, no, she just tosses the gun to Alice and says, "Here!" It's like, you weren't going to try and do anything? You couldn't do anything? She just Michelle Rodriguez hits Alice. I won't say what happens to her, but she hits her. She has her down on the ground, basically down for the count. Jill is pretty much still in good shape. I mean, she had a fight with Alice, but she's still in relatively good shape. Why give the person who's pretty much dying right now the gun when you're perfect? You could have done more.
Other than she's the main character.
Exactly. Once again, it's got to be Alice. She's the one who has to do it.
So once again, Alice is a God mod character, but we still love her because we still pay the money to go see her movies.
Exactly. I pay the money to go make fun of the movies. Yeah, that's our opinions on Resident Evil Retribution. What they're retributing for. Is that even a word, retributing?
Retributing?
I don't know.
Possibly. Maybe a word.
You're
an English major.
That's true. I may have just invented a new word. That's our opinions on it. Take it for what you will. I'd have to agree on a 5 out of 5. It was better, definitely, than the fourth movie, without a doubt. It didn't really feel like anything was resolved, other than the fact that they are now outside of the main facility.
Which was underwater.
Yeah. In Russia.
In Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys can figure that one out. They're not really sure what they were getting Retribution for. But now this leads to the next one. Like I said, Alice now apparently has her powers back. Wesker gave those back to her.
Powers she didn't have before.
Exactly. Throughout the whole movie, the last two movies, she has been powerless, despite being unstoppable.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Hopefully we do it again.
Of course.
Trust me, we will be reviewing more movies. These conversations we're having right now these are what we talk about not only during the movie, but as we're driving back from the movie. So.
It gets really passionate and loud.
Oh yeah, she has to quiet me down. It's a good thing there were only a couple other people in the theater. That also says how good this is. Like I said, this is Retro Girl, and I am Speculative Dude. We'll see you next time.